Okay, before I call this meeting to order, I did want to acknowledge the disaster, the tragedy that has occurred in the Middle East with the terrorist attack on Israel. It is something that struck, me real hard, the notion of such violence being perpetrated on innocent civilians. And I think it's important that we speak about it and say that that level of inhumanity is just unacceptable, and that we keep in our hearts and prayers those people who have suffered through this, and also that here in our country we do as much as we can to fight anti-Semitism, because that is certainly at the root of this conflict. So there was a vigil in San Diego last night that I was able to attend, which I thought was very cathartic, but it is going to be an ongoing issue, and I would ask the community to lend their support to the Jewish community. So with that, I would like to call to order this regular meeting of the Encinitas City Council for Wednesday, October 11th, 2023 at 6:02 p.m. And would the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Blackwell?
Here.
Councilmember Ehlers?
Here.
Councilmember Hinsey?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Lyons?
Here.
And Mayor Krantz.
Here.
Record will show that all members of the City Council are present this evening.
Okay, very good. Thank you. If you'd rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. The first item on our agenda is a presentation of a proclamation to Tony Brandenburg, and I wanted to give a little bit of a background on this. I was at the Olivenhain Oktoberfest with Bruce, and he had received word that a former planning commissioner and longtime Encinitas resident, Judge Tony Brandenburg, was very sick. And so the idea came up about presenting him with a proclamation. Bob reached out to the family to see if there was a willingness for Judge Brandenburg to be recognized in that way, and it was indicated that he was indeed, though, very sick with cancer, which had returned. He had fought it apparently, and things were going well, but his health had deteriorated. And unfortunately, he didn't live to receive this proclamation tonight. So we are going to present a posthumous proclamation to Judge Tony Brandenburg. And as someone who has a long history in Olivenhain and with his family, I've asked Councilmember Ehlers to present this proclamation.
So if, Cindy, if you'd come up and bring the family up too. Give them a minute. So Tony gave me the honor of drafting the first draft of this, and I tell you, I got to learn things. I knew Tony pretty well, but I didn't know him as well as I did once I read all the other things he had done in his long, well-lived life. One in particular struck me. He was testifying at UCLA at a UCLA event about tribal law, and the depth and the sensitivity that he displayed in his knowledge about tribal law was just impressive. And he was, and the balance it had to make with local law, county law, state law. So I was impressed. The second thing I did in preparation is I called Bob Bondi, who is not commonly known as the father of Encinitas, led the incorporation effort, which Tony worked very, very heavily on, and Bob acknowledged. But Bob had told me years ago, and I confirmed it again when I talked to him, that Tony had taught Bob everything he knows about campaigning. And I was wondering whether that made Tony the grandfather or the uncle of Encinitas, if he was, I don't know, so, but that, so we're here, we're up here because of people like Tony. And so hence we'll present this wonderful proclamation to Tony. So I will read it. Whereas Judge Tony Brandenburg has been a resident of North County and Encinitas for more than 50 years, and whereas Judge Brandenburg recently passed away on October 3rd, whereas Judge Brandenburg served our community, region, tribal nations, and country in many honorable ways, his contributions were comprehensive, frequent, and outstanding. And whereas Tony served in the Marine Corps and was honorably discharged, and whereas Tony received an Associate Arts degree from Palomar College, he furthered his education with a Bachelor of Science in Education and school teacher credentials from Eastern State College, and then a Master's of Arts degree from the University of Connecticut. And whereas Tony further continued his education and received his Juris Doctorate in Law from Thomas Jefferson University, and in 1983 was admitted to the bar of the state of California, he became a lawyer in private practice, an entrepreneur, and an educator. And whereas in 1984, he was elected to the school board of the Encinitas Union School District and served honorably from 1984 to 1990. And whereas Judge Brandenburg was appointed to the California Municipal Court and later elevated to the Superior Court as a commissioner on the bench at the Vista Courthouse, where he served 16 years, retiring in 2004. And whereas Tony continued his judicial career as chief judge in the Intertribal Court of Southern California, serving 10 more years, retiring again in 2016. The Intertribal Court, by the way, resolves disputes in a culturally sensitive process among participating tribes. His work and his effort earned him a Eastern Connecticut University's Distinguished Alumni Award. And whereas Tony was appointed to the Encinitas Planning Commission from 2010 to 2017 as a representative from the Alevinheim community, where he maintained a deep respect for his role in serving the community by taking the time to explain the process to the public, thereby encouraging civic engagement and ensured applicants were treated fairly. And whereas most recently, after a lifetime of work in the courts, he was called upon once again to serve, being selected as the chairman of the Ethics Commission for the Mandan, Hidatsa, Harakara Indian Nations in North Dakota. Whereas Tony worked continually and throughout his career to improve the legal standing of Native Americans and the quality of life on all reservations, in 2002, he was given an honorary doctorate by the Connecticut State University for his work on tribal issues. As chief judge, Judge Brandenburg was asked to testify before the U.S. Senate regarding tribal law and order, regarding the Tribal Law and Order Act of 2010. So, long breath. So, whereas Tony's honors and contributions are numerous, and probably not all enumerated here, he also volunteered and gave decades of service to the Encinitas Rotary, to the Alevinheim Town Council, and the 4-H. Now, therefore, I, Tony Kranz, Mayor of the City of Encinitas, along with all of the City Council members, do hereby declare October 11th Judge Tony Brandenburg Day, to remember and honor him for his long history of service to our community, the tribal nations, our region, and nation. Thank you. It's up to you. So we invited up his wife Cindy and family to say words if they'd like to. You don't have to, but it's up to you. But it was an honor to work with him, and I think all of us will miss him dearly. So here, maybe we can get a picture with the without the mic. Did you want to, or it's up to you?
there's so much to say, but all I will say is that I think there's going to be a bit of a hole in Encinitas, and to leave it not.
Yeah. And it was interesting when I went to say hi to Cindy before the presentation. She told me about 2 other things he did. So there are so much that I could have put. I stopped at 500 words, by the way. So, but thank you, and thanks for coming. So.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you to the Brandenburg family for being here tonight, and we extend our condolences for your loss. So with that, we go to item number 5, oral communications.
All right, we do have several. I'll call you 3 at a time. And just a reminder, this is for comments on items that are not listed on the agenda. First speaker is Raul Villamar, Trina Priest, and then Ellen Burr.
My name is Raul Villamar. I am the owner of the Encinitas Barbers. We've been having problems with the parking, and I've come several times, and I'm still going to be coming. Our customers coming this morning, I have some people from Germany. I had them from France. I had them from from places all over the world, and they still can't find parking. Today was a slow day in downtown. We still can't find parking. I have pictures of the lot across the street on Founders Drive. We don't know if it's a drive or not. I asked the gentleman from Ace Parking to check on it for me to see if that's because the parking back there, you can't get in and out because there's a van parked there. There's delivery trucks parked there. And if there's an emergency there's nobody's going to be able to get back there. I need to find out if that's and stuff like that. I left this afternoon and I had to back up. The lady in front of me backed up. She had to go around the other car that was pulling out. It can't fit. We also have a food on our parking lot on Saturday night. I get one of my customers call me and tell me that there's a food truck sitting in front giving out free burgers. And so I called the sheriffs, and they said they were going to send somebody over. The Founders Drive sign up on top, after I called, and now it's missing. It's missing up there. All it says on there is East Street. The other part is missing. I go, we have pictures. I don't know how, I'm terrible with sending pictures and stuff like that. I have pictures of all of that. And but the one thing is that we're never going to be getting over COVID because all those parkings it's empty. They're empty. I don't know what else I can say, but it's empty. There's no customers there. I just went and got a drink before I came to the meeting. I took videos of that too. I'll bring them next week because I'm going to have my son send them in. But there's nobody out there. I don't know why we're still fighting about the parking. When is the agenda coming up? We need to talk about the agenda. I have thousands of people that want to talk, that want to come down here and talk about the parking. Another thing is the parking across the street in that area there behind the restaurants. I got pictures of it, and you'll see it's a mess. It's dirty. It has cardboard boxes. It has pizza boxes, food boxes, drink boxes, cups, and everything like that on it. I finally called, and somebody came by and cleaned part of it up. But right behind a Big Bear, you have a big trash can. You have the van parked there, and that thing is messy and dirty. I got a picture of 5 rats inside the can on a glue trap. I got pictures of that. I'm going to show you. And one of the last thing I have is there's a gentleman who fell down and he has a coma because he fell off his bike. The other day, I have me and my nephew were sitting there. We're watching Mr. Krantz come down on his bike without a helmet. Wednesday, the day before you were coming down, just swimming by and you stopped.
I had my helmet on.
There was no helmet. I got my nephews to prove that we didn't have a helmet on.
show me.
Okay?
I
Well,
had
I
my
can't show you,
helmet
I
on.
didn't have a camera on you, but,
I had my helmet on.
okay.
Thanks for policing that.
All right, thank you.
Trina Priest, Ellen Burr, and then Sandra Anderson.
Good evening, Mayor and Encinitas City Council. I am Trina Priest. I'm a parent of 3 teens and a middle school teacher and a community volunteer with our youth programs. Yesterday, October 10th, was designated as World Mental Health Day by the World Federation for Mental Health. While rates of depression and anxiety have increased across age groups, children and youth are experiencing some of their greatest challenges. The California Department of Public Health noticed last month that suicide is the second leading cause of death among adolescents and young adults aged 15 through 24. Parents like me feel almost defenseless against the pot advertising and promotions that have already become part of Encinitas marijuana marketplace, especially when the research continues to come in linking the high-potency THC marijuana products, a strong seller at marijuana storefronts, to the devastating effects on youth adults' mental health. Several national parent groups are collecting and sharing their stories regarding the loss of their children. These stories that tell of young and vibrant lives ended by suicide after their descent into addiction through high-potency marijuana vapes and edibles. Parents are concerned that the opioid misuse epidemic occurred because the parent voice was disregarded, and it's happening again. We feel that the risks of today's high-potency THC marijuana products and its effect on young adults' mental health are being overlooked. Hopefully, our city council can be counted among those trusted adults and healthcare professionals who are concerned about the harmful effects of marijuana on our children, teenagers, and emerging adults. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. I only met Judge Brandenburg once, and that was the night he should have been selected to fill in the vacancy on the council, but so much. Which I think was my first attendance at this meeting. The cycling lobby has totally distorted development and transportation and mobility needs in this city. Yes, people should be able to ride their bikes safely. Realistically, without e-bikes, there are very few places where people would be riding their bikes on a regular basis. And the idea that we are going to offset CO2 by moving people onto bikes is ridiculous. 40% of your population would never consider getting on a bike. And I'm talking about old people like me and young people who aren't old enough and the disabled. If the Birmingham projects go through as planned, I, for one, will never drive a car up or down Birmingham. It will be just too dangerous. We have done a lot of studies, and there are a lot of reports, and they keep being done over and over again, and I can't decide whether that is truly because you're not getting the information that you need or you're not getting the information that you want. And the last transportation type meeting I went to, it was mostly people who are on committees or commissions, you guys were there, or who are engaged at all times. And part of it may be that there was poor dissemination about the meeting information, but I think a lot of it has to do with people are just fatigued by the number of studies going on about this, and then apparently nobody takes the information into account or believes it. I mean, there was more than one person at the 2 meetings I attended that said, we've already done this. Why are you asking again? I do not know. But in furtherance of this, I'm not sure how much time I would say that the gentleman who was here in the interim, and I guess he left because it was silly to have a caretaker until we had the Sandag information, and then we had to go get more information, is his major concern and statement was, you need to take care of what you have and fill in the gaps. That's it. And maybe that's why he's gone, because that's not something some people wanted to hear. Thank you.
Next is Sandra Anderson, followed by Bonnie Bobzian, and then Dolores Welty.
I'm here tonight to talk about Resolution 2023-105 that was adopted at the September 13th, 2023 City Council meeting. This resolution added...
Ma'am, why don't we pull that item? It's on our minutes, is that correct?
Well, it's in the minutes. Do you want me to talk about it there?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll put in it. Thank you.
Yes,
Sorry.
please.
Dolores Welty, Teresa Conkey, and then Natalie Satoon.
I thought I had 10 of these, but I only have 5. But I'll bring more. Hi, I'm Dolores Welty from Leucadia on Sheridan Road, 2076. And I found this in the Union Tribune for September 4th this year. And I thought it's good information to have when we're talking about housing. Because of course, it's the whole county. It's not just this area. But you will see the top chart is San Diego County wages. And you know, to have a low-cost house, you must, to be able to buy it, I believe you have to have $67,000 annual income. And where is that on the chart? If the gentleman there would put his finger on 67,000, you will see that does not include food prep and serving, health care support, building and grounds cleaning and maintenance. I'll skip farming, fishing, and forestry, personal care and service, transportation, and material moving, production, office and administrative support, sales and related, community and social service, installation, maintenance, and repair, protection service, protective, although probably sheriffs make more than $61,000 a year, but maybe not. Maybe they can't afford it either. And then we finally get up to construction workers who average out at least $67,580. So the whole idea of housing needs to be attacked in a very holistic and whole manner. And we need to really get down to who can afford what and what the rents are going to be. I want you to keep this chart for your own information, which is why I ran it off and gave it to you. And you will see down below the county occupations projected to have fastest growth. And they are, of course, cooks and restaurant and nurse practitioners, ushers and lobby attendants, ticket takers, etc. It's really a good chart, and it's very helpful in dealing with housing. And I think I have just enough minutes to say thank you very much.
Next is Teresa Conkey, followed by Natalie Satoon, and then Jim Stiven.
Could you play the audio? First, Teresa Conkey, this is the audio from the August 16th School Liaison Committee meeting.
I'm gonna have to look, I'm not sure what's going on with the audio.
have to go back to you. I don't have it ready yet. I could just play it on my phone.
What's that?
I could just play it on my phone.
It's up to you.
Let me try that.
The collective years of experience in this room, we all know what the right thing is to do. You know, it's a matter of having the courage to actually do it. So.
Well, I would say that there isn't a soul here that lacks that courage. I guess part of the challenge is, and you brought it up in your text message yesterday, if this goes viral. And it appears that at least at this point it hasn't gone viral because, and that's good, because that's what these losers want. They want it to go viral. They want to own the libs, you know, all this sort of thing. So the question is, how can we address the issue without being specific about this one in particular to give them the attention that they so seek? So I'm happy to have that conversation and certainly look forward to, you know, having an equity committee or I guess not call it an equity committee. And have these conversations because it's very important.
Yeah, no, it's something that we.
So what I'd like to know, Tony, is what has not gone viral? What do you not want to go viral? Who are these losers that want to know or want to own the libs? This is very disturbing verbiage. You even called the Public Health Commission the Equity Committee, because that is exactly what it is. I find this audio to be deeply disturbing, because what I hear is a mayor who has divided our city into liberals versus Republicans that you referred to. It is your job to be bipartisan, and clearly you have chosen. And apparently the Republicans are the losers. This language is not the language of leadership.
This is oral communication, so generally we can't speak to those to comments that come up. But I will tell you that I would have been happy to meet with you to tell you that the issue was a racist photograph, a photograph of a racist sign display board that was created, and it happened to be created that morning, and the perpetrators of that vandalism really wanted that picture to go viral, but I don't think that that would have done anybody any good. So the losers are the ones that vandalize signs and put up racist messages. I don't know what their party affiliation is, and generally I don't take into consideration party affiliation, but in the meantime, racist messages are what we need to get rid of.
Sure. Natalie Satoon, Cardiff. When Mayor Kranz presented the August 23rd proclamation to North County Justice Allies supporting Overdose Awareness Day, it occurred to me that NCJA had a previously planned harm reduction distribution scheduled at Glen Park. Upon learning NCJA supports harm reduction products, including needle distribution, I decided to email each of our council members confirming their position since harm reduction was supported in the proclamation. Bruce picked up the phone with me, Allison deferred to Tony's response, Kelly didn't acknowledge the initial email nor my follow-up. Joy supports needle distribution, as does Tony. By signing this proclamation, has the council quietly or covertly implemented policy in an underhanded manner without community input? There are so many problems with the responses and non-responsive of these emails. Tony, your response bewildered me the most. In your response post-proclamation, you said you didn't even know who NCJA is, yet you presented them with a proclamation just 3 weeks before. How can our mayor not thoroughly know the proclamation recipient as well as a recipient's position when even outlined in the proclamation? By signing this proclamation, each of you affirmed on behalf of our city that harm reduction is essential. Maybe that's why other cities refuse NCJA's ask. I requested last month that entities and individuals our city endorses and partners with would be required to comply with our ordinances. My PRA revealed NCJA did not seek city permitting for this advertised distribution. Why is this allowed? Why, at the very least, is policy not implemented requiring Sharps containers be affixed at all harm reduction distribution sites? Why in our parks? We're in an outdoor community. Why do we trust that someone overdosing and needing Narcan will properly dispose of paraphernalia that may contain fentanyl residue or a contractable disease? Another note with emails, there are flaws in council responses concerning tents with the CRC. A resident tested the CRC distribution by going into the CRC and requesting a tent on 9/9. Please, council, know what's truly happening with your city partners. Residents independently educate themselves, and you should too. We pay a lot to live here for the quality of life. Where's the representation of the majority? Why is this council so supportive of a small percentage far outweighing the public safety of 63,000? After my comments at the last council meeting concerning quashing council dialogue of a vote and noting 2 Robert's Rules violations, I received a call from our mayor the following morning. Our mayor admonished me for pointing out this violation. He went so far to say that my public comments are erroneous while peppering his feedback with profanity. Everything I come to with this council has been thoroughly researched and confirmed by CPRA. The mayor's phone call catalyzed me to point out public comment, input, and voices deserve to be heard. Other folks receiving similar calls of admonishment or profanity may consider voicing future concerns, but I will not be intimidated or silenced when I see leadership wrongdoing. Thank you.
Next speaker is Jim Stiven, followed by Kathleen Stiven, and then Dan Vaughn.
Mr. Mayor and honorable council members, I am Jim Stiven, and together with the people behind me in line, all of whom have filed speaker slips, we are members of the Faith and Actions group at St. Andrew's Episcopal Church. And for your information, this week is National Homeless Awareness Week. And in light of that, we're going to present a video that discusses this problem.
So I'm Kathleen, and I'm giving my time for the video.
Can you imagine living in a community that has solved homelessness? A world where when an emergency arises, a person can get the support they need to remain in housing. And if they ever lose their home, they are moved into housing quickly by a system that knows them and what they need. Homelessness is rare, brief when it happens, and never becomes a way of life. The truth is, we don't have to just imagine it. In the Gulf Coast region of Mississippi, any veteran who becomes homeless is connected to housing within 30 days of identification. No one's left behind. And they aren't the only ones. Across the country, communities in Built for Zero are proving that homelessness is solvable. They do it by shifting their methodology and their mindset. First, they build a single team that is accountable for ending homelessness across the community. Who's responsible for ending homelessness in your community? The truth is, many stakeholders hold a piece of the solution, but no one has their eye on how the pieces fit together. In Built for Zero communities, everyone who serves the population works together to align their collective efforts behind a shared goal. Second, they commit to a shared aim of ending homelessness. Often, success for those working on homelessness is defined by how their individual programs perform. Built for Zero communities measure progress by whether they are collectively driving down the number of people experiencing homelessness. Their goal is to reach functional zero, a dynamic milestone that ensures homelessness stays rare and brief. Are fewer people experiencing homelessness than can be routinely housed? Once they reach functional zero for veterans or people experiencing chronic homelessness, they work to sustain it and scale that learning to the next population until their systems are built to end homelessness for all. Third, they know everyone experiencing homelessness by name and in real time. You can't solve a problem that you can't see. And homelessness is a dynamic problem that is constantly changing. But it's often tracked using an annual anonymous street count, which is just a snapshot. To end homelessness, a community needs a video. Built for Zero communities maintain by-name data on who's experiencing homelessness in real time. They understand not only every individual's needs, but the dynamics of the population as a whole. They know who is entering homelessness, who is actively experiencing it, and who is exiting it. That way, they can target where systems can be improved, test new ideas, and track whether their efforts are actually driving numbers down. Finally, they make data-driven targeted investments. Expanding housing resources is crucial, but many cities have dramatically done so without making a dent in homelessness. The reason? They never fix the housing system. Real-time data enables communities to secure and target housing resources to drive the greatest possible reductions in homelessness. Homelessness is a big and complex problem, but it's not too big or complex to be solved. While it affects those who experience it in the deepest way, it affects less than 1% of the population. Communities can build systems that continually eliminate it and ensure everyone has a place to call home and live with dignity. We can take steps together toward a future where homelessness being rare and brief is the norm, not the exception. Is your community a part of it?
Thank you. Dan Vaughn. Within the city of Encinitas area, the 5 service providers that work with the homeless community are beginning to self-organize, the building blocks becoming a pyramid. So we're starting to make some progress with regards to this homeless action plan, but we're not able to work with the urgency that this crisis needs. We lack resources, and frankly, we lack urgency. We move it at a bureaucratic speed. So I'm asking Encinitas leadership, city leadership, to embrace a goal that we fully adopt the Built for Zero model and work to eliminate homelessness for the unsheltered residents of our city who want housing and can't afford it. If you could go to the website. This necessarily includes, maybe scroll down a little bit. This necessarily includes recognizing, this is perfect, recognizing that homelessness is a housing problem. The researchers for this book studied the diversity of factors that drive the distribution of homelessness from city to city. And as it says here, it's not drug use, it's not mental illness, it's not poverty, it's not weather, it's not generosity of public assistance, it's not low-income mobility. What it is factors in the housing market, the cost and availability of rental housing. Rental housing starting in our city is $1,200 market rate for one bed shared in a bedroom with many bedrooms in a shared group home. $1,200 per month is out of reach for most of our unsheltered population who, while they have income, it's typically more like $1,000 a month. And we have essentially zero supply of those 12,000 a month beds. In order to meaningfully address homelessness, we need to adopt a shared housing model and bring online many, many, many more 20% AMI, $1,200 or less a month beds. And I wanted to start a video for an inspirational group that is working to popularize a shared housing model in San Diego. You can go ahead and start it. These folks are tremendously encouraging. They're here in San Diego County, and they're actively looking to partner with organizations like
Scary.
the City of Encinitas.
Dark side. Don't know really who to trust. I've been in some
Pause the video for a
facilities that
second
were
there.
really.
So, somebody else is
Yvonne?
speaking?
Yes. That's
Okay.
Yvonne, and then followed by Gigi Miller.
Okay, so it's your 3 minutes we're into right now with the video. Okay, thank you.
Bad. And the place I live in right now is a blessing.
Residents Janaid Mugni and Debbie Whitaker are off the streets and living in stable, clean, and safe homes, thanks in large part to the Independent Living Association. The ILA is a collaborative community-wide effort that helps improve independent living homes for adults with mental illness and other disabling health conditions. Independent living serve residents that do not need medication oversight, are able to function without supervision, don't require care, and can live independently.
It's critical to their health and their success in recovery. If you do not have housing, it is almost impossible for you to recover from your mental illness.
Rhonda Gibbs created the concept of an independent living association after seeing firsthand the substandard living conditions at many local independent livings where hundreds of local residents were living.
He was, living in a room that had maybe 3 feet of plywood between him and 6 other people, and it was in a basement, and there was feces and filth and mold, and he was sleeping on the floor.
Rhonda wanted immediate change, including assisting homeowners with important guidelines and resources to provide quality independent livings for San Diego's mentally ill, underserved, and sometimes homeless population. The ILA offers owners training and education, peer review home visits, rights advocacy, and a public directory to showcase high-quality independent livings. May DeVera is a co-founding member of the ILA.
They teach us what can be done, what you should not do, what you can do, and all the resources that you can go further to improve the lives of our residents.
The Independent Living Association provides standards for these homes to provide quality support, safe environment for individuals that are utilizing their services.
To successfully run the ILA, the association relies on its partners like the Alvarado Parkway Institute and many others.
We're looking at the home. We're looking at providing a safe and supportive environment for our patients. Sometimes they end up in homes that are not providing that quality care, which could lead to them possibly being homeless.
And the ILA is the first of its kind in the nation, and it's facilitated by Community Health Improvement Partners, or CHIP.
CHIP was chosen because that shares the vision of helping. Their organization has done incredible work in the community, but the success of the ILA clearly was a great choice.
The ILA is working. Currently, there are 250 beds at ILA member homes. That means more residents have a safe place to live and are on the road to recovery. Without those beds, many clients could be on the streets.
They understand what's going on with us. They don't treat us like a case. They treat us like people, like human beings, which is what we are.
It's home. It's home for right now. And I never felt, comfortable in a place like this,
To learn more about the Independent Living Association, please visit the ILA website at ilasd.org.
Did it?
And Gigi Miller has the remainder of the time.
Thank you all. Or you want
You don't need
to
it?
use
Okay.
2 minutes?
Oh my gosh. I'm Gigi Miller, and I'm with Faith in Action at St. Andrews. I also coordinate our meal program that we have on Saturday mornings for primarily our unhoused neighbors. And I just want to advocate for the same things that Dan spoke to as well, that you all take a look at how we can get to Built for Zero, that video that Dan showed. There is a funding opportunity that's come we've become aware of it through the Regional Task Force for Homelessness, there's a notice of funding opportunity. And I would encourage you, and I think everyone of Faith in Action would encourage you to take a look at that. There are a lot of good programs that we could avail ourselves of. And I know we have a homeless action plan, but this is money that could be spent to use in some of those programs that are spelled out in the grant. So, thanks.
Thank you. And I would say that I had a chat with Dan the other day. He forwarded me the notice of funding opportunity, and I passed it along to the city manager, who's working with city staff to identify opportunities that there may be in that NOFO, as they call it. So I would expect an agenda item down the road with some conversation about that. So keep posted.
Okay, next speaker is Scott Campbell, followed by Mark Maville, and then Valerie Souter.
Okay, good evening, council. My name is Scott Campbell, I live in Encinitas District 1. And my ask tonight is that you add maintenance forecasts to CIP projects in the documentation up front. And you guys are lucky. I went down and checked out the cycle track today, and the tumbleweeds were gone. I'm glad I went down there today because I would have made really bad butt. I'm pretty good at making butt. I would have made bad butt. But that's the kind of stuff that we need. And this is a forecast. This is ongoing. It's going to be on for every year. You know, sometimes seasonal, every week, depending on the season. These seems to be part of the budget stuff. Moving on, I'm really looking forward to the tiles at the underpass, but it makes me think that Olympus Park is missing its tiles also. And once again, Pamela, I don't know what you're doing, but the academy class members that are in the commissions, something's going on, because I listened to their talking and it's working. Speaking of that, at the mobility meeting, they were talking about Sandag modeling of traffic, and apparently it's bad. They made some bad projections based on road mileage usage taxes, and they had to take those out, and there's been delays. And I just wonder if that affects some of the developments, particularly housing element developments, that they're using bad forecasts. I wonder. You guys did a policy letter last couple weeks ago, a month ago, SB 423, thank you. That's local control, supporting local control. But I have to ask, why did it take so long? I personally brought this up in April and in June, and it took you until September to actually write a letter when it was really late in the process. I just wonder why, you talk about local control, but exercise local control. Obviously, the IT policy with the videos is kind of tough. There's lots of overhead projections, so maybe we can make a change with that. We're talking about homeless people. I talked to a guy today, Dave. He was wearing a safety vest, and he was on the side of the road pulling weeds. He was doing good work. He was actually doing really good work. He's living on people's porches. I know, he's real. And I wanted to thank you for not selecting me to be on the Public Health and Safety Commission. You really freed me up to make verbal faux pas like that freely. Thank you. It's really good. I'm going to go over time since everybody else does. I'm going to take 10 seconds extra. So in that selection process, there was 12 members, and you picked 7. I'll have let you know 4 of them were members of Encinitas Citizen Review Panel, and the Vegas odds that none of them got selected, 4 out of the 12, is 1.01%. Just think about that. Thank you for your time and your service.
Thank you, and we still need to shave those bushes that we have on the streetscape. They're encroaching on the bike path. I ride my bike every day, so I get.
You know what I'm talking about. They hit your legs.
I feed them. I get the message.
You know what I'm talking about. Thank you, Tony.
Mark Maville. Mark will be followed by Valerie Souter, Sheila Cameron, and then Gordon Smith.
Mark Maville, Council. I've been here about 17 months. I have experienced some struggles, things getting stolen. I was on a good path and then kind of not for a little bit there, but I never fell all the way in. So my motivation is to help at Philabelly, St. Andrews, as far as my frustration and turn it into a positive. And so I do everything I possibly can. In fact, after that meeting last Wednesday, I had to be down in Cardiff, went right over to Glen Park, talked to a couple of the neighbors, got a feel for what was going on. The sheriff were there. We talked. California really can't do much, but, you know, started naming things that maybe were in violation with this Doug guy. And apparently the sheriff did do a great job. I got a call that evening. This is what happens. CMH, they're in there for a day, and then they're released. They're given their medication for 3 days and then released, and their responsibility is to continue on that. And a lot of times it doesn't happen. So what these people are doing here with that program is something that is a benefit, not a liability on that situation. I'm a very strong person, so my situation is going very well. I hate to say that because I don't want to, jinx it. But the fact that, an effort, and I went down there and I got the call and everything started just happening. Wells and the other gentleman here, they're taking care of what they can with the limited resources, 1 unit per city with 1 guy in there. So that needs to be beefed up to protect those people that are paying the mortgages and the taxes and the fear and all that other stuff. And I talked to a librarian over at Cardiff a couple days ago, and she says, it stopped. I don't know where he is, but it's quiet there. So hats off to you guys in the sheriff department. The last thing here is if we can get an update on the Leaning Tower of Pisa that's supposed to be going up, I guess, the 7-story deal. Where are we at with Sea Bluff and the cannabis huts? There's got to be something that can be done, slowing that down, or I don't even know why they're here in the first place. It's not once again, a benefit to the community or the kids. And the outside dining, are we going to do anything? The gentleman with the situation with the parking, the only way that's going to be rectified is to pull that off. We're no longer in that COVID situation, so it's either a memorandum, get the construction, pull that stuff off so that these kids have a fighting chance going down that street. I've ridden it a lot, and it's pretty dangerous with that limited amount of space, with the biking thing. So,
thank you.
Anyway, overall, I think things really are going well. The way
Thank
they
you, sir.
handle that, it's quiet now. So
Thank you.
let you know. Okay.
Can you hear me?
No, please pull that down.
Pull it down. I know I'm short.
You can pull it towards you, too.
Okay. Like this?
There you go, yeah.
Okay. I'm from Leucadia, and I just want to address the council and ask them that as they review their legislative agendas and priorities, there are real problems in this city that a lot of the people complain about that need to be addressed. And some of them are the crumbling infrastructure. I don't know if any of you have driven down North Vulcan lately, but it's like driving off-road. That street really needs to be repaved along with a lot of the others in town. The patching of the streets isn't working. They need to be totally resurfaced. And then the downtown parking, everybody's talked about the parking. The parking is impossible and getting worse. And the city needs to build a parking structure or do something to give people, citizens and tourists and businesses, more parking. Okay, the sand replenishment. Tourists come here for the beaches. If the beaches don't have sand on them, they're not going to come. Tourists bring money. They support the local businesses. So we need to get our beaches up to par. We need to get parking so when the tourists do come, they can park and support the businesses. The homelessness, this has been addressed quite a bit this evening, so I won't go into that. But I did talk to someone at Father Joe's down in San Diego, and they have empty beds every night. The homeless do not want to go into shelters because they're rules. They want to be able to drug and drink, and they're not allowed to do that when they go into these shelters. So then that's an issue. And I don't know how that's ever going to get straightened out. I hope that some of these groups can work together and figure it out and fix the problem. That'd be wonderful. Okay, the Clark Avenue project, it's a disaster. We hope that you can reconsider that, and the 2,000 car trips a day coming off of Clark Avenue, Union Street, onto Saxony and onto Leucadia Boulevard, the infrastructure can't handle it. It's a train wreck. A low-volume traffic project has to go in there. This massive, over-dense project, it's not appropriate there. So I'd appreciate it if you folks would reconsider that project, because it's going to destroy the Union Street and Clark Avenue projects. I have a house on Union Street. My tenants will never be able to get out of their driveways in the morning. They won't be able to get to work on time. They won't be able to get their kids to school on time. It will be bumper to bumper on both those streets. So if you take another look at that, that would be great. Okay, I think that pretty much wraps it up.
Thank you very much.
I'm tall, Valerie. Good evening, Council. Just very quickly, I wanted to say a few things about Tony Brandenburg. He was very involved with incorporation, a true stalwart of this city, not just the Liebenheim, but the whole city. He was proud, he told me, that he escorted Marjorie Gaines into the hall when we became a city. She was the founder of our city and our first mayor, and he was always proud of that. It's nice to have a list of all these accomplishments. Clearly, he was a gentleman and a scholar, but he was also, and I have to say this as a woman, a very beautiful-looking man. He had long white hair pulled back in a ponytail, always was dressed nicely, wearing Native American jewelry, and proud of his Native American background. He had a great heart. And we are going, and he was a wonderful presence here, and we're going to miss him. I just wanted to throw that in. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that, Sheila.
Yes.
Hello, my name's Gordon Smith. I am the president of the Encinitas Community Garden, founder of the garden, and very proud of our Encinitas Community Garden. But I'm not here about the garden. I'm here about something that's going on for so many years now, is this eyesore that is down on Pacific Coast Highway that was the beach house, and now it's just this skeleton of a place. And it's just disgusting to see when you go by. It makes Encinitas look like caca. Okay, so this is just bothering me. I was the chef at George's by the Sea many years ago. That was my first chef job. I was a chef at the Albatross. I was part of the beach house. I've been a chef up and down this coast for many years. I used to own the Basil Street Cafe. This restaurant, this piece of property, needs to be looked at, and why is it not being taken care of? Either tear it down or build something. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. And I share your concerns. I did see that there is some effort to start tying the buildings together and continue with the construction. So hopefully they can get through that fairly quickly.
Mayor, that does conclude oral communications.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And with that, I would ask the city attorney to give us a report from our closed session.
Thank you, Mayor Kranz. We had two items on closed session, conference with legal counsel, existing litigation. Trujillo versus City of Encinitas, and the City Council took no reportable action on that item. The second item on our closed session agenda, Conference of Legal Counsel, significant exposure, did not take place. That was taken off the agenda. And that ends the closed session report.
Okay, thank you. And City Clerk, are there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes to the posted agenda, and then moving to the consent calendar, item 8B has been removed by the public.
Okay, so 8A, 8C, 8D, 8E are remaining, and I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Oh.
I'll let Councilmember Ehlers take that second.
Okay.
Motion carries unanimously. That takes us to item 8B, and the two speakers are Sandra Anderson and Bonnie Bobsian.
Okay. Here we go. Again. Okay. I'm here tonight to talk about Resolution 2023-105 that was adopted at the September 13, 2023 City Council meeting. This resolution added 2 more apartment complexes to parking permit zone D on Via Molina. The new resolution also added a 30-day expiration date on visitor passes. Yet, the resolution retained the 3 maximum number of visitor passes wording in the resolution. The way it's currently written, this would only allow residents 3 months of visitor parking. Even with 3 months per calendar year, this would still be problematic because residents would lack visitor parking 9 months out of 12. We completely support expiration dates on visitor passes, but I don't think the City Council intended to limit residents to 3 months out of 12 months of visitor parking when they added the 30-day expiration date wording to the resolution. Perhaps we should change the resolution to give 20 no-cost visitor permits per residency per calendar year for a maximum of 5 consecutive days for each permit. This idea was borrowed from Oceanside. And one more item also, at the meeting, it was discussed about adding license plate numbers to resident parking passes. That's nowhere in the resolution that got adopted that night, and I'd just like to say that this would be another good improvement to curtail abuse of the permit situation that we have right now. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you bringing this to our attention. I would say that I didn't expect that by adding 30-day limit to the guest passes, that we were going to end up with just 3 so for 3 months. So there was no intent of doing that. I think the question is whether there's something that we can do to correct this with the minutes, and then operationally we address it. I think that, the clarification of that, my hope is that we can avoid this notion that they only get 3 months worth of passes for the year. So I don't know if the city attorney can weigh in on that.
Thank you, Mayor Kranz. If you wish to amend the minutes to reflect the intent of council at the last meeting, you can certainly do that by motion.
Okay. I would move that we amend the minutes to reflect the fact that the 30-day expiration of these permits is intended to simply be to avoid the duplication of the guest passes and not to limit it to 3 months only.
I'll second that.
Okay. Pardon me?
Would you mind repeating that again?
The intent of the 30-day limit was to avoid duplication of the guest passes and not to limit it to only 3 months out of the year. Councilmember Ehlers.
Yeah, and I think my assumption, and I think what the goal is to get the minutes to reflect what we thought the commonality up here was. my thought was that we have a limit on the number of guest permits, and that was, to me, was the maximum number that anybody could have out at any one time, and that the expiration just meant when they pulled one, it would die. It would expire after the 30 days. So I didn't think that it meant you had potentially only 3 months of guest passes worth of those days. I thought you could have a max of, I think it's 3, right? 3 per simultaneously. You can't have 5, you can't have 10, but you could go in every month and get them renewed, right? So that was my thought, and I would think that'd be a fairly common assumption. So I'd like to hear from the others.
Yes, I'm sorry.
You
You were going to speak too. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, thank you. I'm building on what Sandra said. We'd also recommend the following be considered to ensure the number of guest passes distributed do not undermine the purpose of the permit parking system. The increasing number of guest passes distributed, as well as their improper use, have negated the initial improvements when the permit system was first implemented. Other cities have implemented successful guest pass systems that would be beneficial to Encinitas. First, decrease the number of guest passes for multifamily dwellings. City of Orange gives fewer guest passes to apartment units than single-family dwellings. The Cape and the Ritz tenants, which are not provided on-site guest passes, could be provided guest passes for the Via Molina zone, however, in reduced numbers than the single-family homeowners. Second, Santa Ana gives guest passes only to single-family homes and none to apartments. Therefore, do not give guest passes to apartment complexes such as the resort, which already provide guest passes for on-site parking. The resort has 2 private streets, Via Terraza and Via Morella, that can accommodate 60 vehicles. The resort distributes passes to each unit every month specifically for guests. They have ample on-site parking. A 30-year historical precedent shows that the resort did not need off-site parking on our 4 streets until management changed in 2021. Furthermore, the assistant manager of the resort recently says that there should not be guests parking on our streets. Compared to many other cities, the Encinitas Permit Parking Municipal Code is not adequate to deal with the future addition of multiple apartment complexes, all of which will impact the surrounding neighborhoods. A complete revision of Code 14.41 with input from community meetings is essential. However, in the meantime, these are suggestions to address current needs until a revised code is completed. Thank you.
Thank you. What I'm interested in doing is getting these minutes amended in order to be able to avoid turning the guest passes into a 3-month only situation. These ideas that you're suggesting, we cannot correct tonight. We can't make those changes tonight, but it is going to be part of the conversation that we have as we work to modify our ordinance. City Manager.
So I just want to clarify, and I did ask our city engineer, Jill Bankston, to come up. The staff tried to work within the adoption of the resolution that you passed, or ordinance that you passed, as well as the minute order at the last meeting. So we're confined to 3 passes, and then when the 30-day was added, we're in the confines of what was adopted. So what I would suggest is either we just continue to issue the guest passes as we have been and bring back an item, which would require another public hearing, to get at some of these issues. 5 days, 20 days, 2 per month, 3 per month. Those are not eligible in the confines of what you adopted.
Right, so the idea, I'm not sure where the 3-month thing came. You know, why, if we had 30-day passes, why it became only 3 months worth of passes?
It's 3 each 30-day passes, because the original resolution was 3 passes, and the addition was that guest passes expire after 30 days.
3 total guest passes. I still consider this to be an operational issue. It shouldn't be in the resolution. This is an operational issue. We should have operational flexibility, and we should not be, as part of the adoption of an ordinance, getting into operational issues. The ordinance allows us to set an expiration on guest passes, and that's what we did. It wasn't intended to make it so that they only had 3 months' worth of guest passes. So each dwelling unit on the foregoing streets may receive a maximum. Okay, well, give them 3, but they give them 1 every month, is what I was expecting. 3 per household, and, operationally, I get that it's going to be laborious. I do know there are technological ways that we could probably simplify the process of distributing these passes. In fact, I suspect there are apps and other tools that we could implement that would address some of the complexity here. But I recognize that our ordinance is inadequate to address that at this time, which is why I wanted to defer the adoption of a new ordinance until we've had an opportunity to engage a consultant who has expertise in this, and other cities that are doing these things. I can't believe that these other cities necessarily have staff that are hired specifically to issue guest passes, but I don't know. So I want to look at this, and again, I don't want this parking permit program to just consume our engineering department's time. Deputy Mayor Lyons.
Well, all I want to do is add to what Mayor Kranz is saying in that I didn't vote for this, so the record shows that correctly. But the reason is, this exact reason is because we need a comprehensive review of a better permit parking program. And by incrementally making changes, there are unintended consequences. But I'll defer to what it sounds like there will be some action here on the minutes to clarify the intent of what was intended to be said at that meeting for clarification, and knowing that it's not going to be perfect, but we need to, and we've acknowledged we will, look at the bigger picture in a public forum. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ehlers?
I just want to ask the city attorney and city manager whether I understand we're within the confines of the resolution or that we passed, right? And we're trying to figure out whether the meeting of the minds up here is correctly reflected there. And as I said, my thought was it would be 3 simultaneous for how many ever, 30 days, and that means, I guess, up to a maximum of 12 times 3 or 36. If you get a consensus tonight that we all kind of agreed that was the intent, that's still within the bounds of the minutes, and then we could just clarify that with the minutes for tonight and then move on. Is that acceptable within our bounds tonight?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Ehlers. The final sentence of the Reso D says, each dwelling unit for the foregoing streets may receive a maximum of 3 visitor permits. And what I think the intent, as I hear expressed today, is 3 visitor permits at any one time. Is that accurate?
Yes. So that's the motion that I made. Do I need to clarify it to? Nope, that's good. Okay, we have a motion, and I think Councilmember Hinsey seconded it. So we're ready to vote.
And then I just have a clarification question. Does that amend the resolution as well?
Correct.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Again, Sandra, thanks for bringing it to my attention. In Target, we were in Target together. Yes. We had a Saturday morning conversation about parking permit programs. You asked if it was okay, and I said, yes, please. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, we're moving on to our action item for tonight, which is item 10A. It is a conversation about our legislative policy on priorities and our legislative program. So Assistant City Manager Campbell is here to introduce this briefly.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. The city's legislative program is designed so that the city is ready to support or oppose bills from the state or federal government based on the strategic plan and legislative priorities that are set by City Council. Each year, City Council can look at these legislative policy and priorities and make changes as you see fit. Staff prepares letters for council approval or ratification depending on the timeline of when the request is made, and they're based on the priorities in which council sets. The city has legislative consulting agreements with 2 firms, one for state legislation and one for federal legislation, that assists with letters communication. The legislative program has the purpose, priorities, and the current council legislative positions on the website under legislative program. Tonight, staff is looking for City Council to review and discuss the legislative program and provide direction to staff on the legislative policy and priorities and if any changes would like to be made. So I leave that to council to go ahead and discuss and review. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I know that we've had a couple of letters come before us where we had conversation about them, and I think it was helpful to have that. I would say that our program is written in such a way that it does, I think with some intent, leave the ability to address a number of different variables that may come from legislation, and I think that's good. In the end, I think that what we're working with has for quite some time, in fact, been a pretty good base from which to work. So I'm happy to have this conversation to see what we might want to adjust. And I wonder how many public speakers we may have tonight.
We have 8.
8. Okay. So is there any other, let's hear from the
10.
public.
First speaker is Ellen Burr, followed by Teresa Conkey, and then Natalie Satoon. You don't want to speak?
Good evening. I'm hoping that there's been a change into what I read online about including all the COVID money, input, actions, whatever, because that's gone now, so it should not be included. And I am certainly hoping that we are going to emphasize local control, home rule, whatever you want to call it, input on that, because one of the most illuminating and sad things I read in our housing element was the recognition that the city can't do much because the developers are totally in control. Unfortunately, I didn't bring that little piece up with me. And finally, there's a listing, there's a subset in there talking about equity. And it goes and it lists that we want to make sure all of these things are looked at, you know, that there is no discrimination based on age, sex, religion, culture, heritage, yada, 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 yada. But you know what? The one thing it didn't mention, I think I just said it by mistake, was age. And that's a big one. I mean, 40% of your population here probably falls in, depending which age category you use, whether it's 50, 55, 60, 62, 65. I think we need to be more cognizant of legislation that can help with that population. Sacramento at least did acknowledge some time ago that if you're going to get people to move out of their houses, you need to make sure that they're not going to be paying more in taxes. So that was a little thing they came up with, but realistically, that's not happening. So people want to age in place, and we need to do more to make sure that that demographic, which was omitted, is now addressed. Thank you.
Next speaker is Elena Thompson with time donation from John Thompson followed by Steve Gherkin, and then Karen Caden.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the time to speak on the Legislative Priority Program tonight. I was interested, Ms. Campbell said that you can make these priorities as you see fit. And I'm totally supportive of the update, and I've talked about this in the past, but I think a review and discussion with the public is appropriate, which is why I think we're all here, so that's good. And it seems like the priorities should reflect the voices of the Encinitas voters, I would expect, right? Including our principles, values, and priorities of the majority of the residents. So, you know, I'm grappling with as you see fit versus kind of democratic input on this. So anyway, I think a lot of the past priorities are really not the responsibility of city government. I mean, a lot of these are national agenda items and seem a little misplaced here, but let's carry on here. And then I would just say that the old priorities, there's 4 pages of them, and I did look at other cities' priorities, and the city of Del Mar, for example, has 1 page. So we've got kind of the highlights, and then we've got way too many bullets, because let's just make sure we can do it. But let's make sure we're doing what the public wants. So my suggested, sorry, I forgot about my presentation. Oh, time off now. Don't use my time here. There we go. Here we go. Yeah, I think this equipment needs an update. Okay, so there it was, the good idea. So these are my suggested program priorities for you all, and I'm not going to read each and every one of them, but I think the main takeaway is that we should have brief legislative priorities, and many of these you already have, which I think is good, but some are just totally absent, and I think promoting law and order, punishment, deterrence for crimes is really important, including tough love with the homeless. And that's a whole nother topic, but a big one. And I did not see fiscal responsibility as a legislative priority, protecting youth and the next generation, so therefore sending letters to Sacramento against a lot of the terrible legislation now being rolled out against youth and children. And I think we need to be sure that we say in there that we're protecting residents and taxpayers' community character, property, zoning, that's absent, as well as investing and promoting economic development. That was just a big gaping hole. And to me, what we should be encouraging at the state and the federal level, including in our own town, is people having jobs, people working, self-sufficiency and personal responsibility. And I think that really makes for thriving, well-maintained communities. So I would highly suggest that. So it seems like the role of government is really to protect the constituents and not the people who don't live here, including, you know, the homeless industrial complex, NGOs, that kind of thing. So I'd like the focus to be there. And I was concerned because it seems like a lot of the legislative priorities from the past, let's see if this jumps ahead, we've been silent on key priorities like the effort right now to overturn and gut Prop 13 that I mentioned last week. Why didn't we send a letter on that? Why are we not speaking out about open borders and the issues that causes for the San Diego region? So the silence, I think we need to really be speaking up on some of these things, and I question why we're not. And then furthermore, some of the past legislative priorities that I would not agree with is the surrendering to state control and state housing law, providing a roof over everyone's head. Like, how are we going to pay for that? So if we're going to back something, we need to be able to pay for it. And that one's a concern, as well as this housing equity stuff. And I just got an email tonight that there's inequality in housing in Encinitas. Well, there is worldwide. So I just think we need to be careful with our priorities. Also, last year, There were 2 legislative letters that went to the state pro-transgender agenda affirming medical surgeries for minors. I mean, that was really scary to see our city sending a letter in favor of that. Really? Yeah, and then pro-abortion abortion's always been legal in California, but we sent a letter affirming, to kill a baby in a womb up until 9 months. Really? So this gets back to, let's get the public and the constituents behind these agenda items and make sure that tonight we do that, because I just don't know where a lot of this is coming from. And if this is representative democracy, I would say it's really not. It does not represent my views, any of this on this list. And I would imagine that many of those Encinitans over the age of 50 that was just mentioned probably would also disagree, and in fact, a lot of my young friends. So we have to have a good, colorful discussion on this, and I'm here to trigger some thinking in that regard. So thank you for that opportunity. And I guess I'm just curious what the process is going to be, so we don't just do a cut and copy of the last year's agenda of priorities. And then lastly, I'll just finish up by saying that let's get our ship back on course, guys. We're kind of we're straying from the reservation with our legislative priorities, and it's scary. It's a little too political and partisan. Thank you. And I have attachments here that you can buzz through in your free time, demonstrating all these points that I think are good visuals that are worrisome about the straying from the reservation.
Next speaker is Steve Gherkin, followed by Karen Caden, Scott Campbell, and then Sheila Cameron with a time donation from Dolores Welty.
I'm going to test the clicker. It works for me, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Steve Gherkin, and I'm here to talk about determining legislative priorities for Encinitas. It's always a tough act to follow Elena Thompson, but I asked to do so because I think she painted a really broad picture for the council to determine. And today, because, well, why am I not working now? There we go. There's so many legislative priorities to go through, and only with 3 minutes, I can't have a dialogue, so I'm going to focus on one, local control. Local control was a fundamental issue for the founding of the city of Encinitas. We probably all know a little bit of the history that it was to establish local control, especially land use planning, when we formed in 1986. And from 2012 to 2018, local control was a legislative priority for Encinitas, and it continued to develop and get more robust. In 2018, Prop A, the Citizens' Right to Vote Amendment, placed local control with voters over any major change to planning policy documents, et cetera. And this again reaffirmed that Encinitans were still concerned about local control. In 2019, then Mayor Blakespeare wrote the staff report for the legislative priorities, resulting in a council-approved seismic shift away from local control. And I'm trying to push this. There, and this is the report, and it was authored by Mayor Blakespeare. I want to make sure that I'm showing you that that's not just my words. Why is this, I don't get it. It's not working, okay. I'm sorry, stop this, would you? Okay, thank you, sorry about that. So in 2018, we were protecting local control of land use decision-makings in our legislative priorities by these 3 items. By protecting local control of land use decision-making that would hinder or threaten local control. We would seek opportunities to regain local control over state-imposed density bonus laws. And we would seek legislative relief in applying building construction codes to unpermitted units. But in 2019 through 2023, under the local control, we have been asking to support legislation that provides opportunities to support efforts of compliance with state housing law, and to support legislation that will provide or expand the ability of a local authority to impose or collect fees. That's not local control, but that's transfer of control. And then, because what's coming up in '24 is the Citizens Initiative to retain local control over land use and planning, I think we now need to look and say, how are we going to align with that initiative as a city? Gosh, what am I don't know what I'm doing. There we go. So I'm asking to consider, oh boy, how's the state control of local housing, land use, density working for us in Encinitas? I'd ask each member of the council to tell us their position on this, because elections are coming up and we need to know what your positions are. And if you don't remember about our local control, just think of the appeal you heard on Pereira's Point. So I'll go to the last slide. So I'd ask you to support to hold regular public workshops on legislative priorities and legislative policies so a true democratic process identifies the policies that Encinitans want. And I think that you probably had a chance to read this earlier today, so I'm out of.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Scott.
Okay, good evening, council. My name is Scott Campbell. I live in Encinitas District 1, and I'm here to talk about legislative priorities, and maybe influence your decisions a little bit, ever so slightly. There are 100+ priorities. That's too many. How can you possibly prioritize out of 100? You can't. There's too many. If everything is a priority, then nothing is a priority. How have past council positions, and that's, some of you have been here for a while, put us in a position where we're worried about being non-inclusive? You need to ask yourselves that, and we're so worried about it, but what have you done to be worried for? It's interesting. So how are these priorities selected? Well, they're part of the city strategic plan, which is created by the city council. I get that. When's the last time this changed? It changed in 2020, in May 2020. It didn't change, so why are we here tonight? Why are we making changes? Nothing changed in the strategic plan. That's quite interesting also. If you look at public comments, how do you get public sentiment? Last year you had a CPP and that was a mess, a disaster, but there's that data there. How do you judge public sentiment for all this stuff? If you do a survey of the published agenda items and what people are talking about, they're talking about drainage. They're talking about mobility. And I'm not saying plus or minus, just talking about that as a topic. They're talking about development. They're actually talking about policy, which is what we're talking about tonight. That's number 4 on the list, and they're talking about parking. Very close is elections also. These are the main things that people have been talking about this year in the published agenda. You can go back to last year's CPP meetings, and people were really against all these climate change stuff. They didn't want to spend money on it. They were in favor of diverse energy sources. Last year, they made reasons why they did it. There's nothing in it for this year. They talked about vital community services, local control, and public safety. Let me translate that for you. That's diverse energy sources, police support, no to Sacramento, and less services for homeless. So I asked for you tonight is to reduce the CCC stuff and take the good stuff and move it into the energy area. Remove social issues. That's really not a city thing. City's about roads and public safety. And inclusion does not mean special treatment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Karen Caden, followed by Sheila Cameron with a time donation from Dolores Welty, and then Dennis Caden.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council. Representing the values of Encinitas residents, this is what our council should be doing. The legislative policy and priorities please direct staff to changes that the city should design and plan to serve a purpose to protect the general plan and the local coastal programs for the Encinitas residents. Walk your talk. Protect local control should be more detailed, as the city opposes legislation that decreases local control and decision-making authority over land use, zoning, general plan matters. The city opposes legislation that restricts local land use control. Support the state and federal legislation policies that support local control and land use and housing issues. Oppose any state fed that take away from the local control. I'd like to add, please, utilities undergrounding, support legislation and administration action that would help facilitate the implementation of city's municipal code to underground power poles, and including advocating to the CA Public Utilities Commission to issue rulemaking that would make undergrounding projects more cost-effective and fire protection. Financial support. Now, I have a little difficulty with this because the city should be running like a corporation here and thinking about our taxpayers' money. This has nothing to be against any, I'm not a racist. I'm from New York. I live in a mixed culture. So financial support, you have this funding and programs for the LGBTQ plus. Like, if you're going to keep that in there, which I think you're all going to do, add to other identifiable disabilities and special need communities and age to embrace participation in society. Protect the sensitive environmental land and the animal corridors near the lagoons and inland bluffs. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And I'm from District 1.
Good evening again. The impetus for the citizens of our small, varied communities to band together and form the city was to achieve local control. Very simply, that was our purpose. It was with the promise that local control would be built on the precepts of maintaining each community's distinct character and quality of life. When we voted to become the city of Encinitas in 1986, local control was our mantra. Our purpose and mantra of the citizens of this city 38 years later is still the same: local control. Our county and state intrusions into all facets of land use, over county and state intrusion into all facets of land use decision-making. So what has happened? In 2019, the legislative policy and priorities rewrite of the first 2008 version deliberately eliminated local control. Yes, local control is listed as a priority headline, but it doesn't exist. The first bullet under local control reads, quote, support legislation that provides opportunities to support efforts of compliance with state housing laws. That is state control. It is not local control. Eclipsed were the original phrases, quote, seek opportunities to regain local control over state-imposed density bonus law, and the phrase local control of land use decision-making. Our number one priority under local control should be. It appears that our city has lost its way. Instead of supporting our general plan, which is our city of institution, constitution, by the way, it isn't just a master plan or a general plan, it's our constitution. That mayor and council in 2019 turned their back on it. You, our current mayor and council representatives, need to be in tune with your constituents. Put back the local in local control. Other cities are angry at the state's overreach. They are fighting to maintain local control of their cities. You know who they are. But Encinitas isn't. Why? The initiative, quote, Our Neighborhood Voices, unquote, will be on the November 2024 voting ballot. It is important that we all support it because it is about regaining control, local control of decisions regarding land use to determine our own destiny as a city. It will be a statewide initiative. I'm encouraging this council tonight to get a head start by reinstating true phrases of local control in our legislative policy and priorities. I am concerned that I want to see a really robust discussion on this tonight, and this may take more than one night, because I think people have stated you need to trim this back. You got too many priorities and not the right priorities. I think some of the social things may not be at the top of the list for people. And a lifelong Democrat, I used to be a bleeding heart liberal. I'm a little less so now. My final point is one of the priorities headlined is expand pandemic relief. Eliminate that. The pandemic is over. Particularly support extension and funding for continued outdoor dining. No, that's got to go. People downtown have all the little small businesses that we all go to. In fact, I know my woman I go to for alternating my clothes, because you go up and down a lot, women know how that is, come from Arizona, Utah, other places in California. They can't find a parking place now. She has one in front of her place because the restaurants are taking it up. The restaurants already had outdoor parking, and I'm sure they can manage to go back to what they had and do very well. So my main focus here is local control. I hope I've made that clear, and I really hope you will give it back to us. It's up to you, but by next November, it'll be up to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. That's not zoomable, is it? Or it is. Zoom in a little bit? Thank you. Dennis Caden, Leucadia. Say a couple of improvements here, I think, just to think about. I agree with a lot of the things people said here. There's one here that says protect local control. It should say including our Proposition A policies. On that, support environmentally sustainable cities. I have no idea what that means or how we're going to ever do that, except through spending a lot of money. We should promote a just, equitable, and inclusive community. We could maybe have a sign with just the 10 Commandments. That covers it all. And then the expand the pandemic relief, that's over, so that needs to come on out. Support parks and open space, and then we should say that we want to support our Neighborhood Voices initiative, which you've heard enough about. Protect local control on the bottom, as Sheila just said, I agree 100%. Instead of support, it should say oppose legislation that provides opportunities to support efforts of compliance with state housing laws. We want to oppose that, and then we want to support legislation that would provide or expand the ability of a local authority to impose and collect taxes. Like we want Sandag to give us a vehicle mileage tax. We don't want that. The other one is support environmental sustainable cities. The top one, support all efforts to reverse the climate changing effects caused by human activity. after China and India get on board to do the same thing, because there's very little we can get done in the United States. They are the biggest polluters in the world. It's not going to help. We're not going to help that. In the middle, support legislative providing funding for the acquisition and restoration of wildlife habitat. Sorry, you guys just let us down on Piraeus Point because you didn't come to bat for habitat at all. Community choice aggregation. We have no business supporting or choosing winners or losers. You could substitute the word Solyndra in there, I guess, for community choice aggregation. And then next page, if you will, promote public safety. You want to delete the thing about oppose bills that relax gun control or gun violence restrictions. I bet everybody in Israel right now that owns a handgun feels a whole lot better than somebody who does not own a handgun, based on what's coming across our border. And next page, finally, oppose oil drilling offshore and on land after we have proven green energy sources. And then, again, promote just and equitable inclusive community and include special needs people as well as the elderly. And then finally, expand pandemic relief. You might as well eliminate all that because we're out of it. Thank you so much for letting us talk to you tonight.
Thank you.
And then we do have two individuals, Teresa Conkey and Natalie Satoon, who do not wish to speak but voice support for local control. And that concludes speakers.
Okay, thank you. Yes, it says it right there, protect local control. We are indeed looking at bills that have an impact on local control. And we have opposed many and found that they were adopted nonetheless. And so we are, in fact, in a situation where complying with state law is, we ignore it at our peril, because the litigation that we have paid for over the years has been millions of dollars worth of lawyers. And so that was how this evolved to say things like support legislation that provides opportunity to support efforts of compliance, because our efforts of compliance to comply can get very expensive. So we do want the state to support us with those expenses. But I appreciate that this is something that the community is interested in. I appreciate you all coming out and speaking. This is a representative democracy, and the way this program works is that we generally have this policy to identify bills that we want to support or oppose. There are times when the five of us are not unanimous. Those times I look to bring it on an agenda to have that conversation to see whether the majority supports or opposes those legislative items. This is a deliberative process. I would point out that the neighborhood initiative that was, the petitions were circulating in 2022. I did a council member initiated item to encourage my colleagues to support that measure. And as a matter of fact, I was the only one. There was not a motion to support that measure. That's the way it works. We'll see when that ballot measure actually gets to the point where it's circulating petitions and whether they get enough signatures. Last year they did, or in 2022, they didn't get enough signatures. So it's a little premature, I think, to have that conversation. Councilmember Ehlers.
Yeah. To simplify, I'm going to talk in probably a couple of rounds here rather than do it all at once, but I wanted to start to address local control. So I think if I just point and go to the next slide. There we go. So, when I looked at this, and some of this has been said, so I won't belabor it, but which statement is most aligned with Encinitas voters? The protect local control and land use decisions, oppose legislation that hinders or threatens local control, or support legislation that provides the opportunities to support efforts of compliance with state housing laws. Next slide. It's number one, obviously, and number one is local control, as the heading says. The number two is state control. It's not local control. So I want to talk a little bit about the history of the program and of the local control bullets. I'm right now focused. Next slide. So if we go back, the legislative program was adopted back in 2008, and thank you to the clerk for fixing so I could go back and pull these records. But that's a snip out of the local control section from the 2008 report when it was first adopted. And you see they even had it in the title of land use decision making. And it was in there. Go forward to 2012, same thing. It's unchanged, so it's been unchanged for 4 years. Go to 2013, they added a new one because we began dealing more and more with California density bonus law. And it had seek opportunities to regain local control over state-imposed density bonus law. Next page. History continues, 15 the same, 16 the same. 17, they added another bullet, didn't take any away, added another bullet to seek legislative relief for applying building construction codes to unpermitted units, which was, we were trying to get more of our ADUs permitted. Next slide. Then in between 2018 and 2019, as Steve Gherkin said, there was a radical shift. We had 2018 unchanged, 2019, we completely deleted all of what were the historic local control bullets that really did local control and replaced them with what I see as state control. And so, next page. So my conclusion is I would like the council to restore local control to the legislative priorities. And again, I'm not necessarily saying take away anything, but I believe it was in there, belongs in there, should stay in there. And it's specifically add the protection of land use decision-making and opposition to legislation that threatens local control, and then reinstate the seek opportunities to regain local control over state density bonus law. So thank you.
Deputy Mayor Lyons.
Well, thank you. And thank you for the people who came out to talk, because I took a lot of notes, and I appreciate your sentiments. It is always very helpful in the public process. I will look to include some of the wording I heard that I think is aligned with my position and the position of my district. But first, I wanted to talk about I just want to make something clear, I think, that might help answer some questions that some of the speakers had. Something that's a little bit hard for sometimes me to interpret these words based on is that this isn't what our plan is. This is our response to what the state and the federal plans are. So when it comes to us using some of the wording we've used in here, it's not that this is our policy written, that we have control over this policy. It's when the state, I'm going to use them as a shortcut, but when the state comes forward with something and we want to tell them we like it or we don't like it. But that's all this is. So it's kind of limiting in that what we are communicating is just what we would like the state to do or not to do based on what we understand the community's values and interests are here. So sometimes our wording gets a little hard to follow. For example, I'll just use something that I think is kind of basic, but it says support statewide plastic bag ban legislation. Well, we've already made that choice here to support it locally. And so if the state's going to support that, and honestly, they already have, so this may be one of the ones we don't need to list anymore. But
But at a state level, if the state is going to put forward that they want to support that too, then we would give them a letter of support based on our previously determined that these are aligned with our policies. Now, I'm going to look to the mayor to give me confirmation on this, because I think I understand this correctly, and I want to make sure, or city manager. But this is kind of our basic, these are kind of our basic guidelines that will come to the consent calendar, because we've already said, yeah, this is what we want to do. But if there's something we want to support or oppose that's outside of what we've listed here, that can come forward to the public through a council member initiated item. And we can also support or oppose other things throughout a calendar year that aren't on this list, right? Is that correct? If we decide, yes, put it forward on a council member initiated item. Okay. Maybe that wasn't needed for clarification, but in case it was, I just wanted to clarify that. As far as an overarching, because there's so much comment today on local control, I just wanted to share some information just for you, the public and my colleagues to reflect on. When it comes to the words, the terms local control, I think it's really compelling. I think it's really, you put those two words together, yeah, of course we want local control. That's why we're all here. We care passionately about our city, and we want to have the control over decision making. But I'm reflecting on some work I've done with the California League of Cities, where we've been in our committees on housing and community and policy, where we've really drilled down. This is across the whole state, representatives from every city in the state. We've really drilled down on what does everyone mean by those two terms. And what I've learned in that process and what I've concluded is that local control means something different to different people. For instance, I think there are a lot of folks who look at local control and see it as a way to say no to additional housing, to say no to affordable housing. And I've heard people use the term shut the gate. And even though I love the two terms together, local control, I am not in favor of that definition of local control. But when it comes to deciding what and how we integrate affordable housing, I have so many of my constituents come to me and ask, almost in a pleading way, they live here and they can't afford housing anymore. We're losing our people, we're losing our culture. When we lose our people, we lose what's really valuable to us. And I'm compelled by keeping our people in housing here. And so in that regard, I think the control is, it's powerful for us to be able to continue to provide options for affordable housing for our people. So I just want to be careful. I'm going to throw something out there that I didn't have a chance to vet. I was just trying to do a little research on this, but I do know that the League of California Cities was asked by the initiative, Our Neighborhood Voices, to support the initiative on local control. And it was going to come before the California League at their September 9th meeting last month. We're in October. And it's my understanding it did not come before them for vote. I'll need to verify that, but it's my understanding actually nothing was voted on at that meeting, so that would imply it wasn't brought forward for the California League of Cities to say that they would support the initiative, Our Neighborhood Voices. I think there could be a lot of challenge to getting that on the ballot, as our mayor has said. That's all I want to say in a big picture. I do have some ideas about how to integrate some of the wording that was brought up, but I'll pass the microphone at this time.
Okay, before I go to Councilmember Blackwell, I wanted to say thanks to Councilmember Ehlers for withdrawing your request to give another council member an opportunity to speak first. Thank you. Councilmember Blackwell.
Okay, I may do all of my comments at once because I don't have that many, but I'll start with local control. I do appreciate the comments that were made tonight, and we also got some written comments about restoring some of the language about local control. I am okay with making sure we're protecting that, provided we do not throw to the wayside our continued focus on affordable housing, as well as our continued compliance with the certified housing element. Because again, I am not interested in having a lot of lawsuits and money thrown. I am a lawyer, but I don't want to throw money to lawyers. So I think there's a nice balance there. I was really glad to see us sign on to the letter that opposed SB 423, which was streamlining the approach for development and sort of avoiding CEQA. So I think there are ways we can strike that balance, have a strong voice legislatively, but again, try to comply with what we have certified. I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the changes, though, I think we can make. I agree with the comments about retiring the pandemic relief priority. That's probably an easy one at this point in time. When you look at the affordable housing at all income levels, I think I would agree to add something about aging in place. Our language in the bullet points to that one does not talk about aging, and that is a big segment, and we know from many of the studies that happens to displace a lot of people and make them homeless over time. So anything we can do to support that. I'd also agree to add age and disability to the just, equitable, and inclusive community priority. I have no interest in throwing that priority out, but I think enhancing it with some other ones that the public comments revealed would be helpful. I'll move to the supporting environmental sustainable cities. We don't specifically call out in those bullet points about supporting mobility, mode shift, and micromobility initiatives. And the reason I'd like to see that is we have configured our streets around cars, just cars, and I'd like to see us continue to broaden to include people, not just cars. And that includes people on bikes or walking or any other mode that is beside a car. A couple other quick ones in promoting public safety, the e-bike and road safety. It would be great to call that out given our emergency declaration. In promoting public health, the cannabis safety and enforcement, anything we can do to support that. Our voters have told us they did want cannabis dispensaries in our town. We want to make sure they're safe and enforced. And then lastly, one thing that's not really called out is what I would call maybe tenant protection measures and anti-displacement measures. One of the issues is often landlords, they can raise rents, and sometimes excessively. We've just seen a lot in the social media about Karina's taco shop, and there are also just, renters of, resident renters who often lose their ability to live here. Because of excessive rent hikes. And I would love to see us support local businesses and residents here, renters, who are in jeopardy of that. That's it. That was maybe a long laundry list, but I got it done. There you go.
Thank you. And Councilmember Hensy.
Thank you, and thanks to Councilmember Ehlers for letting me speak again ahead of your second round. This is a good discussion, I think, that we're having here tonight, and I'm happy to see there's a reporter in the room so that we can read and digest and learn about this conversation that we're having, because I do think it's important that the city weighs in on what our legislative priorities are. So I did hear from some people saying, why do we take this up? These are things that are related to the state, related to the federal government. Well, the truth is that we as council members also serve on outside boards and committees. So it's really important that we include information about CCAs and that we include our support for clean, green energy, because we do make those investments here in Encinitas. I serve on our agency, and I also serve on NCTD, which receives a ton of federal and state money. So being able to say our priorities as a small city is really important for us to make those decisions on those regional boards. So just a few things I would like to add. I support what my colleagues have said so far about including more goals that relate to active transportation, including e-bike safeties. I think we should have another category, which Councilmember Krantz suggested to me prior to this meeting, regarding active transportation and transportation. So I'm often receiving letters from NCTD requesting our council support for different grant funding opportunities or bills that are making their way through. And perhaps we need more language so that we can just approve those letters on consent or make it a little easier for us to give our support in that way. I do support our social equity language that we have here, and I also support what the Cadence requested regarding consideration for people of all ages. I know that those on the far ends of the spectrum, young ones and our elders, need special consideration, and I don't mind calling that out as part of our goals. And I also support language around those with different abilities. So I think disabled is a term that the members of that community are wanting to see be phased out. And the term that they would like to see instead is those with different abilities, because they have superpowers that a lot of us don't have. Lastly, I will say about local control. When I read some of that language from years past, I think there needs to be an acknowledgement that that the legislative landscape has been changed so much since those early days, with some of the language that Councilmember Ehlers brought up and Steve Gerken, that when we don't have compliance with state law, we lose our local control. And we've seen that with some of the cities that are choosing to spend taxpayer dollars fighting state requirements. And we were that city for a while. We lost millions of dollars, and we eventually ended up with high density housing in places where I don't always think it's appropriate. And so if we have a little bit more of an inclination to say yes to some of these requirements and think about it well in advance instead of fight it till we're up against a wall and we don't have a choice, I think we'll see better land use planning, and we won't see apartment buildings in places that might seem inappropriate to those of you who are in the room who have previously opposed them. I do want to respond to the origin story of the city of Encinitas, which is that when we incorporated it was to maintain local control and keep from overdevelopment. And I represent a district that has the most amount of apartment buildings within our city. The highest concentration of apartment dwellers is within my district. And these apartment buildings are really critical to our supply of affordable housing. So those folks who are our gardeners, are our nannies, are the people that serve us food, make sure that we have employees to work at our local grocery stores, they're making it work in apartment buildings. And so a lot of those legacy apartment buildings make up our community character. So I think that having more apartment buildings is not the bad thing we're trying to oppose. It's the appropriate places for those. And when we can plan in advance and spend more of our taxpayer dollars planning and preparing for the inevitable, which is more housing, because we're all having more people, more kids. That's where I think it's most important. So I'm not opposed to the language that Councilmember Ehlers suggests, but I do think it's important to keep in mind that we are a council that supports affordable housing and that we are a council who intends to stay compliant with state law. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I do appreciate Bruce having the history dug up. That was kind of interesting. I also agree that our efforts to modify state density bonus law were not only not successful, but they over the years have increased the percentage of density bonus and other things. And indeed, it was the city trying to change our density bonus law that resulted in being sued by the BIA, which, of course, that lawsuit not only talked about the changes we'd made to density bonus law, but pointed out we didn't have a housing element that complied with the law. And so while we went back and corrected the state density bonus law application, we still didn't have a compliant housing element. So the saga just began at that point. We had Measure T, then we had Measure U. Councilmember Ehlers was with me on a housing element task force. There were a lot of conversations about state housing law at that, and it was especially challenging because they were adopting new housing laws faster than we could have our housing element task force meetings. It seemed like every meeting we were finding out about another law. And it has been a challenge, and I think that from where I sit, the thing that the legislature could do that would be the best thing they could do would be to quit adopting more laws and let us kind of catch up and comply with what they've already adopted. Yeah, I don't really have any problem with what Bruce proposed, but I, don't have any problem with what's there either. And I do think that the high bullet that says, protect local control is the most important one, because it gives direction to city staff and our lobbyists to alert us to bills that threaten local control. I appreciate the comment that Deputy Mayor Lyons made about the League of California Cities. They are, in fact, a very important group that has been at the legislature lobbying to protect cities' local control. So I agree would suggest some changes to our, to add a high-level bullet that said, that we should be looking to support active transportation. And it says expand infrastructure investment, and then the bullet point says support active transportation investment. I would pull support active transportation out and make it a higher level bullet, and then have a subsection of that we might kick to the Mobility Commission to make a list for us to consider. So with that, I'll call on Councilmember Ehlers again.
So, well, thank you. And I like a lot of the things that have been said. I've been trying to keep a little score sheet of who said what, so maybe we can work that back into a modification list. At a high level, I do agree with that this needs trimming back. The question is how, and simplifying, I think, is probably the most important. Although I'm okay if we don't do that tonight, if we just get local control. To me, I'm showing what a geek I am. Star Trek, the prime directive. To me, the prime directive of the city is to have local control. And when I say local control, just to be clear, we need to choose where the density goes, and not necessarily have it enforced on us, and then whichever vacant land. The rules are pretty Byzantine right now, where it has to be 50% of our land had to be vacant in order to qualify our housing element. That stuff's just got to go away. We should choose where we want density, how much density we ultimately want. And then the other problem is we're building way more market rate than lower income as a result of all these programs. And in fact, many of the programs, California Density Bonus Law and inclusionary housing, they get to double count. The same low-income unit counts to give them credit towards density bonus and getting more market rate, as does counts towards the city's inclusionary. So I'd like to make those rules where you can't double count. So there's quite a bit that is not happening at the state that needs to happen if we can get local control back here. I want to go back and talk about the trimming a little bit, and I'm going to another history lesson going back to the 2008 formation. They were describing what this should do, what this legislative program should do. And they said, quote, the legislative priorities may only address issues directly relevant or impacting the provision of municipal services. Generally, the city will not address matters that are not pertinent to the city's local government services, such as partisan, socially divisive, or international issues. So the intent when this process was set up was it was more the slam dunk, the local stuff, the stuff that affects the day-to-day operation of the city, not to weigh in on international peace talks, not to weigh in on things that didn't. I totally agree to the degree that the legislative process, federal or state, is impacting our local services, that this should address that.
Well, maybe you could give me an example of somewhere in here you think that we have gotten into a federal...
If you'll let me finish, then you can hop in.
Well, no, I was just asking you,
okay,
please point that out.
I will. So I totally support eliminating the pandemic section. That's over. I would like to simplify, but if we don't get that done tonight, I would support the e-bike, because I think that is something very important to us today. I would not support tenant displacement protection. I don't think that's our business. I think that is state business. Let's see. Aging in place, I was glad to hear Councilmember Hines add young to that. Hinsey, I'm sorry. And with a name like Ehlers, I should know better. Yeah, and let's see, where else? The one area on the high-level bullets, I would add one more where we talk about support parks and open space. I would put the word acquire or support also, open space. I think acquire would be a good word to add in there at a very high level. I think we have a general consensus up there, and we just did it. Let's see, so regarding ONV and even Prop A, I mean, as much as Prop A is near and dear to my heart, and ONV I'm going to be supporting, it's not really, it's the subject of this. It is not does not belong per se in here. This should live far beyond ONV. The ONV is the Our Neighborhood Voices initiative that may or may not make it to the 2024 election. So I would not want to include it directly in here. I would not include Prop A in here per se, because I think that's a policy. So did I miss any? Yeah, that's it.
Oh, you didn't tell me what you think we overreach.
That's right. I have to go down. I think it's overreach in a matter of detail in a lot of the more detailed policies. I just
You
like
mean you're
to
talking about on this list?
not on the high list, but down in the bullets.
Right, so which bullet would you strike?
Quite frankly, I was more focused on the big picture,
Okay.
and my whole point, and I think others made that point, is this is a very detailed list. I think Scott Campbell mentioned 100. Are there really 100 in there? Scott, did you count them? Okay. Yeah, it just seemed like a lot. And I was just trying to, with policies, you want to step back some, but I'm okay leaving it the way it is, making the addition that we've talked about, and going forward.
I think that it is intended to provide the city manager's team with a little bit more finer point on each of these bullet points that we have, so that when they're analyzing state legislation or federal legislation, they have a little more direction, a little more specificity. But if you know of a law that fits with one of these bullet points, and we haven't drilled down and come up with a little more detailed item in support environmentally sustainable cities, just because it's not on those 3, 6, 9, 11 bullets under support environmentally sustainable cities, that doesn't mean we don't necessarily oppose or support a bill.
Okay.
So that's the point of this, is to allow staff to determine whether it fits our program.
So I'll give you an example. The community choice aggregation section, I think, should be sustainable energy at a high level. And then I don't think we are part of CCA, so I don't think we need that as a legislative. We're not going to. Why do we care as far as our civic municipality, how our service is? Because we already have that in place. So it's just a point that we could simplify here.
Sure, and so that particular first bullet there, it includes procurement activities of CCAs. So if we wanted to edit that just to be procurement activities, because that's what we still do. Yeah. At the time this was adopted, we had not finished the process of becoming a CCA.
Yeah.
So the other thing I would point out is that, the history, going back to when it was initially adopted, you'll see that the date this was approved was in September of '08, and it was updated in 2022 in March. The policy, if you have questions or issues with the policy, with changes that happened from the way it was written in '08, we might want to talk about it in the policy itself, not necessarily in the program. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if there's something that is going to help inform what we pick for a legislative program that should be in the policy itself, I'm okay with considering that. But I know this, since 2008, has evolved quite a bit in conversations that we've had. So, Deputy Mayor Lyons.
Well, our objective is to look at these every year, so hopefully we can keep these fresh and include the edits that my colleagues have already talked about. There's one thing I want to capture some things that some folks said that I hope that we can add, and then perhaps offer some suggestions for deleting. I've gone through this many times and was one of the original authors because I was here a year ago when we were putting this together. And there's many of these I still do support because they do add a little more detail for our staff. But one thing I think would be good to add is, so under the protect local control, I think there was a little bit of like heartburn from folks about the wording of the first bullet point. And I was understanding that bullet point differently, so maybe we could clarify the language. I'd like to throw, this is probably a question to my colleagues, but I read this bullet point as that we want to support state legislation when they propose to create methods that help cities comply with state housing laws. So this goes to the point where the state burdens us with state housing laws, but doesn't give us any money or any resources. And this is true not only with housing, but where there are opportunities for the state to present legislation that provides us with additional support so that we can respond without depleting our other local resources, then I thought that's where this item was going. So that it may be better stated, the words might be better put to support state legislation that creates methods that help cities comply with state housing laws. I think that's what that's trying to get at, but I look to my colleagues for some input on that. One thing I'd like to consider adding to the next item, which is promote affordable housing opportunities. I really like the suggestion of aging in place and to support any state legislation that provides tools and resources to support aging in place. On the support environmental sustainable cities, we could consider, and I would support, on the fourth bullet down, support legislation providing funding for acquisition and restoration of wildlife habitat. And it was suggested bluffs and lagoons. It could be helpful to add that in. But this is state legislation for acquisition, so I think it's helpful to still have it in there, but it might be a little hard to find that kind of legislation. I'd like to say that I do support the suggestion for tenant protection measures because I think that is a state level responsibility. So we might then consider supporting legislation that protects, that puts measures forward that protect tenant rights. I would like to keep that in as far as a consideration because they are in the driver's seat there. It is a state duty and responsibility. And so if they are able to put something forward, we would support that. I agree with the active transportation. I think we could probably remove the last two bullets under the support environmental sustainable cities, which are support statewide plastic bag ban and the polystyrene ban, because at this point those have been done. I really do like the idea of somehow putting in here utilities undergrounding. So that might be under the community choice aggregation that we would support any legislation that does support or provide funding or incentives for utilities undergrounding. I think there's something missing from the promote public safety item, and even though we talk about fires and we talk about some aspects of fire protection, maybe that's enough, but if we have the fortitude to add one more item under there, we might just clarify support for fire protection legislation in a more broader way. And I think that's my last comment then is on the promote a just and equitable inclusive community. I agree with everyone's sentiments to add age, disabilities, special needs and special needs communities. Those are my edits. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Ehlers.
I wanted to make a motion for discussion to incorporate many of these, and I can list them out. That I tried to keep notes of the ones we're consensus on, but I would propose that we continue at date certain because there are enough edits here that I sure think it would be good to look at it again together as a group as we get more the nuances of what has been set up here and the direction given to staff. So I don't know if anybody would entertain a continuance to allow staff to watch the tape and get the consensus reflected in an update.
I don't think we technically need to continue anything because it's not a public hearing, but I do agree that we have given a lot of direction about how this should go and that we didn't have a redlining document up. And the other thing is that I would like the Mobility Commission to weigh in on the active transportation section. I don't know if there are other commissions that we might want to give a look at it. I know they all have their own work plans, but my hope is that fairly quickly we could get on their agenda with these requests. So you want to make a motion that says we, ask the commission to?
I'm as a friendly amendment, yes. That to the motion I was making, which
Yeah, well,
I think,
whatever.
But then ultimately it comes back here for another meeting.
Oh, it'll
of ours.
definitely,
Yeah.
and we've got, the legislature's not in session right now. We are not, in a situation where we need to rush this.
Well, and in the meantime, the current policy stands, so
Correct.
we're still operating normally. So that's my
all
motion
true.
with the friendly amendment. I'll look to staff to make sure. Is that any comments?
We'll review the tape.
Yeah, and I think that, we don't have a comprehensive document, each of us, but we will maybe individually provide that to staff, what we think are, what we should do. I think that's technically legal under the Brown Act to provide individual requests to
Yes, provide them
change.
directly to the city manager.
Provide that
and
to
she
the
will
manager, and then
compile them.
she will incorporate that into a document that also includes feedback from the Mobility Commission.
Yes.
And I think that's direction. I don't know that we need a motion. And so we have some good direction here. Again, I thank the speakers tonight for bringing your thoughts to our discussion. And with that, we are done with item 10A.
And can I just ask for one point of clarification? Was it just the section for mobility and traffic safety, or was it also to other commissions as needed?
I don't see anybody asking for any other commissions to hear anything. I was going to just open that up, and nobody kind of jumped on it. So this new bullet point having to do with active transportation is, I would like to give our Mobility Commission a chance to weigh in.
Great, thank you so much.
Okay, thank
And
you
Mayor,
again.
members of council, I did want to just go ahead and give you an update since it came up tonight. SB 423 was signed by the governor. So the city of Encinitas did provide an opposition letter as well as an opposition letter to the governor to not sign, however it was signed.
And so that's unfortunate. We are currently in compliance with the law, so we are not currently under threat of action under SB 423, but we will now need to monitor it very closely to avoid the impacts of SB 423.
Thank you.
Okay. There are no informational items or council member initiated items. Are there any city council member reports pursuant to AB 1234?
Nothing to report.
I attended a Encino Wastewater Policy Finance Committee meeting.
Nothing to report.
The mayor may want to fill in some gaps on this one, but since I'm going before you, I will just say that I attended the Sandag Transportation Committee Joint Borders Regional Planning and Public Safety Committee joint meeting on October 6th, where we got the opportunity to work with the other committees and commissions to do some forward thinking on transportation and how Sandag addresses it in the regional plan. Our mayor was one of the chairs of this event. He may have more to add. I just wanted to point out that Sandag is currently in the process of going through a new update on entering data and evaluating the data on our projections for our population growth in the county, which is really important to how we think about planning in the future. Something that surprises me, and I think it was a bit of a surprise, kind of a milestone moment for even the Sandag folks, is that in this, what they call Series 15 forecast, they show that at this point, and this is still in draft form, that the population increases in the county up till 2042, and then it starts decreasing. Also that the population will be getting older proportionally. They also demonstrate that more houses are needed. There'll be more and more jobs, and also that people will be working longer. I don't know, that's just a little tidbit. It's like, it feels that way for me, but it's good information to have, and I enjoyed serving as the alternate for the North Coastal representative on the Regional Planning Committee and attending that meeting.
Yes, and I would only add that it was great to get everybody together. They were, it was the Transportation Committee, which I serve on. It was the Planning Committee, which Joy serves on. It was the Public Safety Committee, and it was the Borders Committee. I think that's all of them. And we participated in a workshop to talk a little bit about what's coming with the 2025 Regional Transportation Plan. And the workshop exercises were consolidated into one meeting, but the board had done each of those workshops, each of those exercises in separate workshops at board meetings. So I had seen a little bit of it. It is very challenging. One of the things that is intended to happen is that it requires that you identify projects that you want to see built, but because, for example, adding freeway lanes increases greenhouse gas emissions, in order to comply with emissions laws that we have on the books, there had to be other policy or projects that offset the increase in greenhouse gases that would come from that. Then they also had a session where you were able to try and figure out how you were going to pay for it. And they used dollars that were different colors because there is different color of money. It's a reference that happens in those big agencies because a big chunk of what pays for our roads and public transit systems comes from the federal government, and another big chunk comes from the state. And our contribution is critical because usually it's a pretty big part of the money comes locally, and it's a requirement to get money from the federal and state government. So it was a good exercise, and what we're going to be doing in the next few months is getting much more serious about specific projects, which is where the proverbial rubber meets the road. We got to figure out how we're going to get a plan put together that we can pay for and meets both federal and state law. So that'll be ongoing. City manager reports.
Just want to make an announcement that if you have nothing to do on Saturday, or if you're looking for something to do, you should join us for the spooktacular movie in the park featuring the Addams Family 2. Begins at dusk, 5 p.m. at Glen Park. Bring your family and friends, and let's celebrate the Halloween season together with a ghoulishly good time. All right. I thought I was going to get more from that, but whatever. All right. So on a serious note, there is a Pacific View survey going on right now through November 6th. You can click the link on our homepage on the website. And as you know, the staff will be bringing a discussion about Pacific View to the council about what kinds of activities and events will be happening there. And so I encourage everyone in the community to fill out that survey. Survey deadline is Monday, November 6th. And that's all I have. Thank you.
City attorney reports.
I do not think I can top the ghoulishly good time that's going to happen. So I will waive my report for this evening. Thank you.
City clerk reports. Okay, I do want to also mention and applaud the manager and her staff. The City of Encinitas received a Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting from the Government Finance Officers Association of the United States and Canada. And it was based upon the reporting in the ACFR, which is the financial report that we do every year. And it is something that the city has always taken pride in. Is we keep our fiscal house in order, and this important reporting is critical for that. So I want to congratulate you and your team, and thank you for all the efforts. Yes. Okay. So moving on to adjournment, I did want to ask that we adjourn this meeting in honor of a couple of people. One, of course, is Judge Tony Brandenburg. His accomplishments were expressed with that proclamation, and he will be missed. The other is the artist Mark Patterson, who kind of turned the city on its head with a beautiful piece of mosaic artwork that was illegally installed under the railroad bridge in, I believe, 2008. And, or maybe it was 10. But nonetheless, he did it in a very, in an anonymous way. Basically, he made the mosaics at his house on big backer board, and then brought those backer boards down, put up orange cones. Him and his partner Bob Nichols put on hard hats and looked official, put the thing up, and off they went. Nobody knew that it happened. The city council, because of NCTD's insistence, ended up declaring it graffiti and ordered it to be taken down. And up until that point, Mark had remained anonymous because it was his anonymous gift to the city, the Surfing Madonna mosaic. And he got a little panicky when there was talk about the city removing it. He had visions of the city going with a crowbar and just prying this piece of art off there. And so he did finally come forward to identify the pieces of glass that needed to be removed in order to take the bolts out and remove her gently. And so I was glad he did that. She lived to move to what was at the time the wall on Coffee in Leucadia. There was discussion about putting her at the small parklet that is near the Cali Cream and Ice Cream store there. But that was state parkland, and they were concerned about the religious implications of the Surfing Madonna, which I thought was kind of funny, but there's no question that many Catholics were moved by the work. And then finally, it ended up in its current location, which is at the Leucadia Pizzeria. Mark Patterson passed away a couple of weeks ago, and it was... They had a celebration of his life recently, talked about the many people that he impacted with the beautiful art that he made. And so tonight I'd like to adjourn this meeting in honor of both Tony Brandenburg and Mark Patterson.